This is one of the rarest dishes in existence. On the entire planet, there are 3 families. That's it, just 3 that make this dessert. It's called Kanam Pharang and it's sold in Bangkok at a handful of street markets and pastry shops, but it's only made here in a neighborhood called Kudeejeen on the west bank of the Chao Phraya River. The families that make Kanam Pharang use a recipe passed down since the 16th century, when the first European settlers in Siam tried to figure out how to bake their Portuguese pastries using only what they could find on hand in their new homeland. And the few who still practice the art of making the dish are the direct descendants of those first immigrants.
สำหรับตัวผมเองก็เป็นทายาทรุ่นที่ 5 ของร้านธนูสิงห์พวกเราก็ยังคงอนุรักษ์นะครับเนื้อขนมแบบโบราณอยู่ซึ่งมีส่วนผสมหลักเพียงแค่3อย่างจากธรรมชาตินะครับ1ก็คือไข่เป็ด2คือแป้งสาลี3คือน้ำตาลทรายนะครับปัจจุบันเราก็ยังไม่ใช้เนยนมเรายังทำขนมเป็นแบบอนุรักษ์เนื้อแบบโบราณอยู่ที่ปู่ย่าตาทวดเราทำนะครับก็อันนี้ก็เป็นประวัติของขนมฝรั่งกุดีจีนครับขั้นตอนแรกเลยที่ต้องระวังก็คือการตีไข่กับน้ำตาลทรายต้องให้มันขึ้นฟูได้ที่จริงๆก็ต้องมีความฟูและความเหนียวที่มันพอดีแล้วก็นำแป้งสาลีค่อยๆลงไปผสมแล้วก็ค่อยๆผสมช้าๆค่อยๆผสมแป้งสาลีช้าๆนะครับแล้วก็พอมันได้ที่แล้วเนี่ยเราก็วอร์มพิมพ์นะครับวอร์มเตาให้ร้อนได้ที่นะครับอุณหภูมิพอเหมาะกับการอบขนมนะครับแล้วเสร็จแล้วก็หยอดขนมลงไปนะครับแล้วก็โรยหน้าผลไม้โรยน้ำตาลทรายแล้วก็ปิดอบนะครับอบก็ต้องระวังเรื่องเวลาด้วยมันถึงจะได้เนื้อขนมฝรั่งที่ดีครับที่นี่ก็มีความหลากหลายทางสถาปัตยกรรมมีความหลากหลายทั้งเกี่ยวกับพวกอาหารทั้งของคาวของหวานที่มีเอกลักษณ์เฉพาะชุมชนก็อยากเชิญชวนให้ทุกคนมาเที่ยวชุมชนกุดีจีนครับ
This is one of the craziest stories we've ever told on this channel. Almost everything else we've covered was something we might have found pretty much right when we arrived here and then decided to dig into the backstory. But this, I lived here a year before I ever knew this place existed. We've literally filmed twice already in Little India, and that's like 500 meters away. This is the neighborhood of Kudeejeen. It's Bangkok's most unbelievable secret, a neighborhood of old wooden houses lived in by descendants of 16th century Portuguese mercenary soldiers. Here, right next to a famous Buddhist temple, everyone's Catholic. The food is different, the religion is different, the people even look different. But I've been to Portuguese concessions across Asia. I lived for years a short ferry ride from Macau. But I've never been anywhere quite like this. The only thing I can compare this atmosphere to might be colonial Williamsburg, except if it wasn't made for tourists and the old blacksmith shops weren't made for show, but were actually still a way of life. It's not simply a preserved historical neighborhood, it is history, living and breathing. There are 293 houses here, all owned by the Portuguese Catholic Church. And this neighborhood traces its roots to the days when Henry VIII was the King of England and the Spanish began their war against the Mayan Empire. This is the story of Kudeejeen, and we start almost 600 years ago, about 90 kilometers to the north. After the fall of the Khmer Empire in the middle of the 15th century, a small kingdom in what is now central Thailand began consolidating power over neighboring states. This kingdom was based in a city called Ayutthaya and entered a period of fast expansion and military conquest, subjugating Sukhothai and gaining vassal lands stretching in all directions. The kingdom reached as far as Malacca in the south, a vital trading port in present-day Malaysia. But in 1511, a Portuguese naval commander named Alfonso de Albuquerque landed at Malacca, defeated the local garrison, and claimed the land for Portugal. After establishing his colony, Albuquerque sent an emissary to Ayutthaya, the first European ever recorded on Siamese soil. This envoy presented the emperor with a golden sword in a diamond-studded sheath, which pleased the Ayutthaya emperor enough that he formally conceded the land of Malacca and began trading relations with the Portuguese. A few years later, 120 Portuguese soldiers were hired by Ayutthaya to assist in battle against an descendant kingdom based in Chiang Mai. The soldiers defeated the rebels in a rout and in gratitude were granted a permanent plot of land in the capital. Now, for the sake of expediency and the fact that this is still ostensibly a food video, let's fast forward a few generations. It's the late 1600s and the Ayutthaya kingdom is fracturing. They're under attack from the powerful Burmese army, society is fraying, and European missionaries are pushing to convert the local population to Christianity and plundering gold and resources. The emperor expels all foreigners from the kingdom, except for the Portuguese, who by that point numbered nearly 2,000 and had, for generations, integrated and intermarried into Siamese society, while proving the fiercest warriors on the battlefield defending Ayutthaya. The Portuguese, said the emperor, would be forever a part of his kingdom. That kingdom would fall in 1767, sacked and destroyed by the Burmese in the last of a long series of wars between the rival powers. However, no sooner had the Burmese occupied Ayutthaya than the Chinese invaded Burma, and the victorious invaders rushed back to defend their own capital. A Siamese aristocrat named Thaksin then rallied an army and routed the Burmese garrison, taking back the lands of Ayutthaya and earning the title of emperor himself. As his first act, he abandoned the ruins of Ayutthaya and took his people on boats south on the Chao Phraya, seeking land in a more defensible position. He chose Thonburi, which is now the western side of the Chao Phraya River in Bangkok. He built his palace along the waterfront, constructed a Buddhist temple next door, and on the other side of the temple, he granted a swath of land to his greatest allies, the Portuguese. They're still there today. One of those original settlers who arrived with King Thaksin in 1769 was the great-great-grandfather of Torpong Skultong, better known as Chris. He's 66 now and retired from a career as a flight attendant, still living in the house in Kudeejeen where he and his ancestors were raised. He's turned the house into a small restaurant where every day he cooks the dishes he remembers his grandparents making for him when he was a child.
Grandma is a trader. He cook the food, and then Grandpa is work in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to help the king to translate as a translator, and teach the English to the Thai people.
How long ago is this?
Oh, 1769, 1771, 235 years ago.
So
2 centuries ago.
In the time that you can actually trace your family history all the way back to when this Kudeejeen was founded.
Because my grandma and grandpa is tell me about the fact, the story.
So your family first came over from Portugal as traders.
As traders, yes, and warrior.
And warrior.
Two occupation.
But tell me about the war. This is not a part of history that most foreigners know anything about. The Thai-Burmese War, that was where, I guess for 200 years there were battles, right? There was a long period of history where there was fighting. What can you tell me about that?
The battle, I wasn't born in that time, you know. But they tell me, my generation, my grandpa and grandma, is tell me about the history. So we fight with the Burma, and then shedding Burma out. So set up Thonburi zone around this area to be a capital city. After Ayutthaya, after Ayutthaya, the king moved from Ayutthaya to Thonburi. It's because Ayutthaya is very hard to renovate. The Burma is take the Buddha image out and the gold out to their land, to their country. So it's very hard to renovate the country. The king decided to move the capital city from Ayutthaya to Thonburi and then set up Thonburi Kingdom. That is the history.
Let's talk about food. Why did you start this restaurant? This is not your original career.
Yeah, because I retired early. Retired from Thai Airways International. Okay, so I start to do something, when you stay home with nothing, if the life is run so fast. So we decide to get back to the old day, bring the formula of the grandma, grandpa, and cook the food. That is the reason.
Are these recipes that your grandma, grandpa used to cook for you?
Yeah. I have ever seen when I was young. So I remember, I recognize, yeah.
So okay, talk me through the dishes. What do we have?
Okay, that is the roast pork with potato. Unfortunately today we don't have potato. Roast pork. Portuguese people eat roast pork long time ago. So I have ever seen my grandma to do it. So I remember. So we call roast pork with potatoes. But today no potatoes, sorry.
That's okay. And then, it looks great.
Macaroni. Macaroni is often eaten by Portuguese people. Not only Portuguese, in Europe. And the last one is the stew. Everybody knows stew. Chicken stew. It's the same. It's not Thai food. It came from Portuguese.
There are, according to the last official count, 293 houses in the neighborhood of Kudeejeen. All of them are owned and administered by the local Catholic Church, which is the reason why this neighborhood has been spared the demolition that would have, under any other circumstances, occurred here on this waterfront property, land that would be highly coveted for luxury high-rises or the shipping industry. It isn't lost on the local community how fortunate they are that this small piece of history has been allowed to survive intact. And within the last generation, as Thailand has emerged as a fast-growing economy and the rest of the city grows and changes, the residents of Kudeejeen have made a concerted effort to preserve their own heritage. Along with the Kanam Farang shops and the Portuguese restaurants like the one Chris operates, there's a Kudeejeen museum, converted from a restored old house by one local family after the death of the matriarch. Here, there are displays charting the first Portuguese settlements in Ayutthaya, the history of this enclave, and the day-to-day life of residents of Kudeejeen. There's also an emphasis on the influence of Portuguese food on Thailand, including the ingredients brought by Portuguese traders and the dishes first served by the ancestors of this community, which by now have become absorbed into everyday Thai cuisine. And that might be the most interesting part of a trip to Kudeejeen, because in spite of the efforts of people like Chris, it's not a tourist destination yet. So some of the restaurants here don't worry about tracing history or rediscovering old recipes. They're just old houses serving the stuff they eat, the local food as it's naturally evolved. Like here, in a house on stilts right on the riverbank at a place called Helo Nomsod. Here, for a few pennies, you can have a coffee and some snacks like cheese and spinach on toast, and that quintessential Portuguese egg tart. But you can also find this dish, one of the most unique things I've ever eaten. A true culinary unicorn of Thai Kudeejeen noodles served with a spicy chicken curry inspired by the old Portuguese colony in coastal India, and developed in another Portuguese colony in Macau, and finally served at this Portuguese enclave in Thailand with a type of fermented rice noodles only found here.
ก็เป็นครอบครัวลูกผสมค่ะเป็นเชื้อสายโปรตุเกสแล้วก็มีอาศัยอยู่ที่ชุมชนกุดีจีนก็เป็นคนไทยคนจีนด้วยแต่ตาเนี่ยจะเป็นชาวโปรตุเกสค่ะ คุณยายก็จะเป็นจีนก็จะเป็นเชื้อสายลูกผสมอะค่ะส่วนใหญ่คนที่ชุมชนที่เนี่ยจะเป็นลูกผสมกันเยอะค่ะจะเป็นโปรตุเกสซะส่วนใหญ่อะค่ะอันนี้ก็จะเป็นอาหารโปรตุเกสนะคะทาร์ตไทยนะคะอันนี้ก็เป็นอาหารโปรตุเกสเหมือนกันแต่อันนี้จะเป็นลูกผสมส่วนอันนี้เนยนมนี่ก็เป็นอาหารไทยนี่แหละค่ะส่วนอันนี้ก็คนไทยค่ะเป็นคือสูตรของเราเองอันนี้คือสูตรทำเองนะคะค่ะผสมเองแต่อันนี้จะหาทานได้ยากอาหารโปรตุเกสนะคะลูกผสมอาหารลูกผสมไทยจีนโปรตุเกส
King Taksin only ruled Siam for 14 years. In 1782, he was overthrown and executed by a man named Thong Duang, who would establish a new kingdom across the river in an area called Rattanakosin, where he'd take the name of Rama Bodhi, or Rama I. His dynasty still rules Thailand today under the present king, Rama X. And while it's been more than 500 years since 120 Portuguese mercenaries helped preserve the kingdom of Ayutthaya, and while since that time the capital has been sacked and burned and moved to the south and then the east, and seen Ayutthaya become Siam and Siam become Thailand, the promise of an emperor 5 centuries in the past is still honored today. And because of that, one of the most unique and incomparable neighborhoods on earth doesn't just survive, it thrives. Please consider subscribing to the channel for more from OTR and click on the links in the description below to follow us on Instagram or Facebook.